Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spannerman again here with another video. Hope you enjoyed the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Any comments, thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spannerman here. Just to go over a few points about chainsaw teeth, how they're hardened, and how to avoid bluing the metal and the consequences of doing it. So, first of all, chainsaw chain is got a high content of carbon in it, and what they refer to as anything that's got say 0.5 of 0.5% of carbon in is classified as high carbon steel. So chainsaw teeth, I don't know the exact content, but it's probably somewhere anywhere from 0.3 to 0.5 of carbon in it. So it puts it in the category of high carbon steel. High carbon steel can be hardened quite easily, as opposed to say a mild steel. But to harden teeth or chainsaw chain, it's a two-staged process, and you're looking at metal. So in general terms, if we're going to harden high carbon steel, there's two stages. The first stage is that you heat it up to 800 to 900 degrees and you rapid cool it in either oil or water. So that's the first stage. So that's pretty straightforward. The second stage is called the tempering stage. You may hear people refer on there, it can affect the temper and all that sort of thing. So the second stage, in the tempering stage, is generally, depending on the metal, and it can be anywhere from 200 to 700 degrees centigrade. It depends on the metal, and it can take anywhere from 24 hours up to 3 days. Generally, they go for a shorted time because electricity costs a lot of money. So yeah, electricity has definitely got something to do with the amount of time they do it. So they normally don't do it for a long period of time. They do it the shortest possible time that they can. And you'll find out that the tooth will be through hardened, not what we call case hardened, which is only a couple of thou. So what happens to metal when you heat it up at lower temperatures? You start to get discoloration, and that can happen with a chainsaw grinder. And typically, once you get around to about 170 degrees, around 170, 180, you start to get this very light yellow colour. And as you go up in temperature, by the time you get up to about 260 degrees, it'll go brown. And then at about 280 degrees, it'll go purple till you reach blue at 310. So your chainsaw teeth will case harden a few thou if you're using the grinder and you're getting it light blue. So that's something there that you want to avoid. You don't want to be bluing the metal. Okay, so the main difference between tempering and harden is that tempering improves the ductility of the steel. In other words, it'll be slightly less brittle. While hardening increases its hardness, hardness makes the steel more brittle and less tough, while tempering increases the toughness while reducing its hardness. That all makes sense. And when you anneal, there's another process that we can do sometimes, and you may have heard it. It says anneal metal. That generally means that you heat it up and you let it cool down in the air, and that will generally make it a bit softer. So that's not the case with chainsaw teeth. You don't need to anneal anything. You may do that on some of the chisels. The last thing, if you've got a metal chisel, and if it was a little bit too hard, you may have to anneal it. And that could also mean that you've got to be very, very careful. You may put it in an oven at a set temperature, leave it in there for just a little while and pull it out, and you can find out that that will reduce the hardness and that will make it not as brittle. So, not on here to really talk about metallurgy. It was just a bit of a brief description to some of the new beginners out there that are not too sure on it. So when we talk about hardening, we're actually hardening the metal up on chainsaw teeth to about 55 Rockwell. So it's starting to get up there, and it's starting to get, getting near the brittle area. If we look at a file has a Rockwell hardness of about 60. So the file always has to be harder than the metal for the file to able to grind metal away or file metal away. So a file has these very thin feathery edges on it, whether it be a raker file or a round file. And it's these little tiny feathered edges that break away when you file. And by the time that these little edges, or these little knife edges that are on the file break off and about 50% of them gone, then your file just doesn't work properly because it's lost all those little sharp edges. So therefore, if you're using a grinder to sharpen your teeth and you use a file, I use both, but typically I probably use a grinder a lot more, and you're a little bit heavy-handed in bringing the wheel down too fast, you're liable to blue the metal. When you blue the metal, you will increase the hardness. Now, if you can't file it with a file, it means that you've gone past 60 on the Rockwell scale. And that's what a lot of people complain about. They go, oh, if you blue the metal, I can't file it. Well, if you blue the metal and you do increase the hardness, it is what we would refer to as case hardening, meaning only the surface got hardened and it would only be a couple of thou. So if these teeth here were slightly blued and you had trouble filing it, on the next time that you grind it, make sure that you go very, very slow and you get rid of that surface hardness, because that's all it is. It's only the surface hardness through a little bit of light bluing. It's not going to cause any detrimental damage to the chain. What you must avoid is excessive bluing. There's a big difference. So if you get a little bit of light bluing and there's only a bit of a pinprick of blue here or there, don't worry about it. It's not going to, you're still going to be able to file it. What causes a lot of problems when people use this and hold it down? They'll excessively blue the teeth and you've got no hope of filing it, and you may even have to grind 0.5 millimeter off before you get back to the right hardness, which should be around about 55 Rockwell. So it comes down to, I'm not going to talk about setting up angles and that. That's all in another video. There's plenty of videos on my channel where you can look at that, how to grind and angles and everything. The only thing that I would say to avoid any bluing of chainsaw chain using a grinder is that when you bring this down, the moment that it touches the tooth, you just touch it a little bit like that. Just tap, 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 off, on, off, on. Don't want to be going too fast like that, because if you go too fast, then you're not giving the metal or the tooth a chance to cool down. And it's only being cooled by air, and it cools down fairly quickly. So off, on, until you reach the bottom, and you should be able to put your finger on there. That's how you can gauge that you're doing it correctly. You can get through a chain quite fast if you go fairly slowly. You don't have to, it's not a race. And that's what I would emphasize to people there. Don't put this on a grinder and think that you're in a race and you've got to go quick, bang, bang, next tooth, bang, bang, bang. You're going to blue the tooth. And as I said, you're not going to, a lot of people sometimes think that you're going to ruin the chain and you're going to make it soft. It's the actual opposite. You actually make it harder. And I'm only talking about very light bluing. I would say that anyone that holds it there and excessively blues the metal, then you'll take it beyond the point of you're going to ruin the edge, and you'll probably end up being soft if it's excessively blued, because the moment you go past blue, you'll be starting to accelerate into really high temperatures, and that's what damages the hardening. So a slight blue won't really damage the hardening. It will just make it harder and a little bit more brittle. But once you go beyond that, and hardening starts, I've got a little bit of a chart here. There quite easily obtainable on the internet to download. When we start to get discoloration of metal, we're looking around about 180 degrees, and you'll get a very light yellow at about 180 degrees. So that's not going to do anything. Then you'll be getting up to brown at about 260 degrees. Again, that's not going to do too much. Purple's going to be around about 282, and blue's going to be around about 310. If it's very, very light blue and it's only a small amount, you're not going to do damage to the teeth. But if that tooth is very, very blue, there's a good chance that you could damage the leading edge, which is a top plate cutting angle. And that's where you could get some damage because you excessively use the grinder. And that would be detrimental to the hardening of the tooth, and you'll increase the brittleness. You cause all sorts of damage. And that's what you want to avoid. So that's all this video is about, that yes, you can cause damage to the tooth if you do it excessively, overheat it. If you lightly turn it light blue, you will only case harden it by a couple of thou, and it's not going to do any damage to the tooth. So I hope people understand that. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.